Today we resume our winter series of local faith leaders discussing what love your neighbor means in these modern times. So today, asking, to whom am I a neighbor? Please welcome back Pastor Brian Bodt of the Woodbury United Methodist Church.
Woo! So, first of all, I want to say thank you, Rick, to you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be back with you. Thank you for your witness. It's so important. Numbers are less important than symbols very often, and I'm just really glad that you're here week in and week out. Rick asked me if I would talk about who is my neighbor. That's all right. I got it now. And oh, look at that, the sun. You're welcome. No, it's a worthy question in this time of increased tension in our nation and our world. I don't know about you, but there's still questions that remain from the New Year's Day attack in New Orleans that make me pause. The attack in Magdeburg, Germany, also a concern for copycat things. Active wars in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, pit people of the human race against one another. And in our own country, concerns about undocumented immigration and the demonization of those with whom we have a different political opinion continue unabated. So the question of who is my neighbor is a great question. In my Christian tradition and the Hebrew Torah on which that tradition is based, the question is, woohoo! It's actually a complex one. Hospitality for the stranger and loving one's neighbor as oneself are scriptural admonitions, but as with other texts, there are prohibitions that caution against interactions with those who are different, whether those differences are religious or cultural. So to assume that everyone is my neighbor can sometimes be a too glib response, thoughtlessly tossed out as a relationship cure-all without any thought to moral turpitude or moral integrity. Is Putin my neighbor? Luigi Mangione, who killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, is Hamas my neighbor? Is ISIS my neighbor? Are the 9/11 murderers my neighbor? So for Christians, the seminal text to address this question is found in Luke 10, 25 to 37. And as Rick said, my title for this is To Whom Am I a Neighbor? And that's based on Jesus' question at the end of the story. Now, I observe with a bit of irony that the question that's asked in the story in Luke, who is my neighbor, is asked by a lawyer. And as many of you know, the old saying is that lawyers don't ask questions for which they do not know the answer. And that's certainly how this story begins. The lawyer asks the question of Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus asks, well, what does the law instruct? And so the solicitor responds with Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 to 5, and Leviticus 19:18, with love of God and love of neighbor. Do this and you'll have eternal life. And so love is the essence of the law. So far, so good. But then, seeking to justify himself, the attorney continues, and who is my neighbor? So this question, at least in the story and sometimes in our lives, is an effort to limit how much love we extend and to whom. It's designed to get us off the moral hook for the weightier implications of what it is, as the prophet Micah says, to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. So Jesus does what Jesus often does. He tells a story, and many, if not all of you, know it. A man travels from Jerusalem to Jericho, a route known in Jesus' time to be dangerous. He's robbed, beaten, left for dead. A priest and a Levite, a religious lay associate, pass by, and maybe for all the right reasons, right? To avoid ceremonial defilement if the man was dead, to avoid being targeted themselves, to avoid being detained in whatever their travel plans were. The operative word in my assessment is avoid. Religious leaders of whom we might have expected more avoided engaging. The third traveler, a Samaritan, did not. Now, devout Jews viewed Samaritans as both religious and political apostates. Samaritans were the descendants of intermarriage between Jews and their Assyrian conquerors in the 8th century BCE. They also worshipped on Mount Gerizim, not in the temple at Mount Zion. So lifting up the Samaritan as a paragon of virtue in this story must have been at least startling, if not offensive, to Jesus' Jewish listeners. And that offense should not be lost on those of us who call ourselves Christian. While it's fair to ask, who is my neighbor, we need to bear in mind that this question, as I mentioned, was designed to limit moral responsibility and self-justify moral turpitude. And more importantly, from a Christian perspective, and I'd argue from a human perspective, it's to ask ourselves the question that Jesus asked the lawyer at the end of the story. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And the lawyer said, the one who showed mercy. And Jesus said, go into and do likewise. Now, given the human limitations of time and space, as well as where we're positioned within our communities and institutions, there can be limits on our capacity to extend mercy. I'd point out that in the original Greek, the word mercy can also be translated compassion, to suffer with. And so who is the neighbor with whom we are willing to suffer? Each of us are going to answer that question as our journey takes us. But for us at Woodbury United Methodist Church, and in the wake of over a half century around denominational discrimination around sexual orientation, which is the topic I addressed the last time I was here, we at Woodbury United Methodist Church have earnestly engaged in a more recent effort to suffer with our LGBTQI plus siblings. In June, we affirmed locally the national denominational changes that took out harmful language toward those siblings and removed prohibitions on marriage and clergy ordination for LGBTQI plus persons. And not satisfied simply to make that statement, which was an easy statement to make since our denomination had changed its rules, we now have an affirmation and inclusion team that's actively pursuing what it means to be truly welcoming in all aspects of our church life. One of our young adults asked, are you doing this expecting that LGBTQI plus people will start returning to your church? No. While that would be wonderful, it would be insanity to expect that after 50 years of officially sanctioned discrimination, gay folk would start suddenly flocking to our doors. We're doing it out of integrity, because it's long overdue, because knowing that we have passed by too long on the other side before taking up the Samaritan's role. But since it's never too late to do the right thing, we're doing it now. Without question, there are times when evil must be confronted, and the loving thing to do is to resist. Reinhold Niebuhr's theology of Christian realism in the 1930s in the face of growing Nazism is one example, one that I think resonates with the citizens of Southbury who stood courageously in 1937 to oppose the establishment of a training camp here by the German-American Bund. But I think maybe more often for many of us, the challenge is, as Jesus said, to be a neighbor, whether in overt acts of care and compassion or a changed rhetoric and a changed attitude for those who are different. There are many ways to show mercy, to be compassionate as defined in this way. That kind of neighborliness extends beyond a be kind mindset, as lovely as that sentiment is. We must intentionally seek and engage those who are different from us. They belong to our race, the human race. They are our neighbors across the world and across the street. They are we. We are the neighbors called to be a neighbor. Thank you so much.